Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we've got a college basketball DFS slate that is exclusively for the sickos. That's right, DraftKings is offering a two-game NIT slate on Tuesday night, and we are going to break down both those games and tell you what you can expect from each game, as well as who needs to be in or out of your DraftKings lineups, and what you can expect in terms of if you are making any bets or player props on these two games. Now, this is going to be kind of a quick breakdown with it only being a two-game slate, and it's a mostly pretty simple breakdown, but tomorrow night, we're going to be back on the channel. We're going to be going into much greater detail because we're going to be talking about the Sweet 16 games that are on Thursday night. So if you like this NIT slate on Tuesday night, you're really going to like the one Thursday night. So you're going to want to make sure you tune into our episode. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That way you can be with us for that. And if this video helps you out in any way, please hit the like button. It's going to help me out a ton, and I really do see enormous growth because a lot more people are playing college basketball DFS for the NCAA tournament. And so we're also hoping that if you guys are checking out this video, that you guys are enjoying college basketball DFS and you're playing it for the NIT as well. So come back for those NCAA tournament episodes. Please help me out, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. But like I said, we've got a quick little breakdown. It's two games. They're pretty straightforward, but there are some definite angles that if you do your research and if you do know ball, you can take advantage of. So let's go ahead and break it down. So I will say these two games are not like the prettiest, most glamorous game environments. You know, it is an NIT slate. It is nowhere near as greasy and grimy as the three-game CBI slate that we had today on Monday as I'm recording this. That one was... It was something else, and I won a lot of money on that slate. So I'm glad they offered it, and I enjoyed doing it. But this one is not quite that off the wall, right? We've got teams seen on DraftKings slates before, except for Chattanooga. So welcome to the DraftKings main slate, Chattanooga. It's the first time we've seen you all season long. Now, according to KenPom, game number one between Chattanooga and Bradley has a total of 149 points. KenPom has it as Bradley 79-72. Game number two between North Texas and Oklahoma State has a KenPom total of 135, 68-67 in favor of Oklahoma State. So for this one, you're probably going to want to stack this Chattanooga-Bradley game. It significantly looks like this is going to be the game that you're going to want to target, and it's quite easy to see a reason why. Neither of the defenses are very good, right? Chattanooga's offense ranks 50th. Their defense is 240th. Bradley's offense ranks 91st. Their defense is 106th. Neither of these defenses also force a lot of turnovers. So really, you're just going to see a whole lot of shots go up. And these two teams are pretty efficient in shooting the ball. Chattanooga ranks 8th in effective field goal percentage. Bradley ranks 11th. So if you're letting these teams get shots off, they're probably going to go in, and this is going to be a very high-scoring offensive game. Now, with it being the NIT, you do need to be up to date with some lineup news, right? So Chattanooga, they're one of the easier breakdowns on the slate. Them and North Texas are the two easiest ones. So for Chattanooga, last game they played, because they played two NIT games now, they played Dayton. In that game, there was a lot of points scored. Dayton really, like, they brought their offense, but they didn't bring their defense at all. That's why, you know, Chattanooga was able to kind of pull away in the early going. Dayton tried to come back. It wasn't enough, right? Chattanooga was a team that played like they wanted to be there, played like they wanted to win, right? Their starting five is Honor Huff, Trey Bonham, Garrison Kiesler, Bosch Weiland, and Colin Mulholland. And they will play Costal, Richards, Diouf, and Casano off the bench. But against Dayton, none of those bench guys really played enough. Frank Champion has not played in the NIT. I would not expect to see him at all in this slate. So with all that, who are we going to play? Well, Colin Mulholland is a guy that has a huge usage rate when he's out there. He has been moved into the starting lineup for both of the NIT games, has played 29 and 17 minutes, has put up 32 and 20 DraftKings points in both of them. Yeah, he's only $4,200. He feels like a lock to me. And I very rarely like lock players, or maybe close to a lock, maybe 80% on Mulholland, because there's not a lot of value on this slate. And he's a guy that is going to start, is going to be a high usage player when he's out there, and he's only $4,200. It just feels like a very easy click. Now, the other two very easy clicks are Bonham and Huff. So basically, Trey Bonham is a transfer from Florida to Chattanooga. I remember the first season I started the podcast talking about him a few times at Florida, and he has exploded in these two NIT games, 56 and 44 DraftKings points. That's an average of 50 DraftKings points per game in the NIT. Now, granted, he wasn't doing that before the NIT. He was hovering around 25 pretty consistently every game, but this is a super high usage player. He can be a little bit scoring dependent, but if the tempo picks up, he can get some peripheral stats, which is what has led to his big time totals in these last two NIT games. So he is $8,600. I'm kind of buying him as one of the best plays on the slate, but I'll be honest, I kind of would rather play Honor Huff. So Honor Huff is a guy that is not super dependent on peripheral stats. He's really just a scorer, but he's a supremely good three-point shooter. He can really fill it up. Against Dayton, he was 5 for for 10 from three. On the season, he shoots 42%. Just a really good shooter. He can really fill it up. And if he does get the peripheral stats, which he's generally not that great at, his assist rate is only about 11%, whereas Bonham's is 17%. If he does happen to get some peripheral stats, he could really have a good game. I don't know. Actually, the more I make the argument, I think I'd rather play Bonham than Huff, but they're both definitely going to make my player pool. The other two starters, Weiland and Kiesler, they're both kind of hit or miss, that they can go up and down. I think you're much more secure to play Huff and Bonham. And then all the way down to Mulholland. Kiesler has had some really good ceiling games, though, and he does get the dual eligibility. So maybe Kiesler would be a guy that we could look at $5,900, especially as a game stack option because of his ability to put up peripheral stats. But I really do think I'm going to keep most of my Chattanooga exposure to Bonham and Huff and Mulholland. And picking between the two of them, I'd pick Kiesler over Weiland. Now, on the Bradley side, so they had a very interesting saga to start the NIT, right? So it was announced very early before the start of the NIT that Zeke Montgomery and Darius Hannah were going to enter the transfer portal, and they were not going to play in the NIT, right? And then basically a whole lot of Bradley fans basically cyberbullied Darius Hannah into playing in the NIT. He might be in the portal by now. I have not remained updated on this situation 100%. I haven't seen his name on Twitter today. In fact, let me go ahead and do a quick Twitter search right now, because if he has entered the portal, it would stand the reason that he's probably not going to play in this game. But last week he did play in the games because he oh, okay, hold on. Yeah, he is ruled out with an injury. Okay, so it's not. So he didn't even end up in the portal. He's ruled out with an injury. Okay, so glad I researched that. But yeah, you guys are probably very interested to hear the saga of Darius Hannah, right? Cyberbullied into playing in the games, and now he ends up getting injured. Wow, that's like a really cruel twist of fate. So anyway, now that Darius Hannah is out, they're most certainly going to be changing their starting lineup. Vanderknapp and Atlason are kind of the two guys that would be the most likely candidates to take his minutes. However, Atlason did not play in the last NIT game. So Vanderknapp down here at $3,100. This could be a guy with like a generational opportunity at minutes and at playing time. We're going to probably want to wait until we see the starting lineups, but Vanderknapp and Atlason, one of them is going to be getting those minutes. And if they do take over those minutes from Hannah, it's a big time opportunity from them from a DraftKings points perspective. Now, other than Hannah, the rest of the starting lineup for them is Duke Dean, Demarion Birch, Kristen Davis, and Ahmet Jonovich, and Corey Thomas and Jaquan Johnson will play a ton off the bench. So basically, Corey Thomas, like a lot of people that aren't doing the research on paper might think he's the replacement for Hannah, but basically he's been splitting minutes with Jonovich, and Jonovich like just couldn't stop fouling in their last NIT game against George Mason. He fouled out in 14 minutes, and so that is what caused Thomas to play all the minutes. So I would be very much weary of chasing Thomas, and because of the fact that they don't like to play Thomas and Jonovich together, that would like kind of have me reasoning to believe that Thomas is not going to be the beneficiary of Darius Hannah's minutes. So like I said, I'm sticking with Vanderknapp or Atlason, but I'm going to need to see that Atlason's playing before I put him in there. I feel much more comfortable with Vanderknapp. The top two guards for this team, Dean and Davis, are both pretty solid. Duke Dean is tiny. He's like 5'8". He's kind of like a little Isaiah Thomas type player. He can be really good. He's at his best in pace-up games. You look at the Murray State game earlier this season, 85-83. Illinois State earlier this season, 27 DraftKings points in the Illinois State game, 39 in the Murray State game. So like with this being kind of an up-tempo game, I do think that this is one where he could go off, and they're really going to be needing his offense without Hannah, because Hannah really was this team's second best offensive player. Christian Davis is another guy that can really fill it up for them offensively. In the two NIT games, he's been great, 34 and 36 DraftKings points. I do think they're probably going to keep going back to him. And if Hannah's not playing, there's extra usage, extra shots to go around, so I don't mind him. And then Jaquan Johnson is kind of like their energy guy off the bench. I think $5,800 is a little expensive for him, but he is a guy that is going to get minutes and a guy that is going to have a role. All right, that does it for game number one. Let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then we're going to break down game number. All right. Now, if you do want more information from me, there are places where you can get it. First off, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. I tweet out all updates for the show, as well as more than happy to answer any question if you reach out to me on Twitter. I am in the Fantasy Corner Discord. The link is in the description for on the YouTube video, as well as the audio feed for the Discord. The Discord is a free community that you can be a part of. It's just a bunch of really smart, really good people who talk DFS for a lot of different sports, and the college basketball chat in there is probably the most poppin' one. So if you want a community to talk DFS with and just kind of sweat it out together, that would be the place I would recommend going. And if you do want to know who my core plays are, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. I promise I do all the research before I write the core plays article. I was kind of just assuming Darius Hannah would be back, but with the transfer portal starting, I decided to do the search, and I'm glad I did because now I know that he will certainly not be playing. But yeah, I do all the research before I write the article on the Patreon. So on there you can know who's in my lineups and as well as the reason why, because it comes with a full write-up, and I do that for every college basketball DFS slate. So if you would like to know who makes my lineups with all the research done beforehand, head on over to the Patreon. All right, now let's go ahead and move on to game numero dos. That is between North Texas and Oklahoma State. This one, like we said, is that 135-point total. This is the one that we do not want to be targeting. However, I could make you an argument that this is a really good spot for North Texas because Oklahoma State ranks 14th in the nation in tempo. So this could be a spot for North Texas in a big time pace up game because North Texas ranks outside the top 300. They're ranked 363rd in tempo. That is ahead of only Drake in tempo rating. So with it being a big time pace up spot for North Texas, I do think that you can target some of these North Texas guys. And Oklahoma State is not a particularly good defensive team. They're ranked 84th in defensive efficiency. They excel at turning you over, but they're really bad at like a field goal defense. They rank 292nd in effective field goal percentage defensively. So I really do think you can target some of these North Texas guys, and I think they're a pretty easy handicap. The problem is that they do give minutes to a lot of guys, but their starters are Jasper Floyd, Atten Wright, Mule Sissoko, Grant Newell, and the fifth starter in their last NIT game. Let me have that because I want to make sure they didn't change the lineup in the NIT. Floyd, Wright, Newell, Rondell Walker, and Mule Sissoko. That was their starting five. And they played Lorient, Massey, and Josell off the bench. Basically, what they've been doing, though, they've been playing elevated minutes for Jasper Floyd and Mule Sissoko, and everybody else has been playing around 25-ish minutes, and more or less, right? So Sissoko and Floyd would definitely be the two guys that I want to target. They've really been leaning on Jasper Floyd in the NIT. He's put up 40 and 32 DraftKings points, led the team in usage in both games, led the team in shot attempts in both games. So I really do like the idea of getting to Jasper Floyd at $6,600 in this pace-up matchup in a spot against a bad defensive team in Oklahoma State. He's probably my favorite play from this North Texas side. And like I said, I really like Mule Sissoko now that he's getting a ton of minutes. This guy's been around for a long, long time. Never been a consistent minute getter, but always been a pretty good fantasy points per minute player. And now he is getting the minutes. I like the idea of playing him at $6,000 even. After that, it's kind of like playing roulette after those two. You don't really know what you're going to get. Brendan Lorient is probably their best all-around player, but he does come off the bench, so his minute totals can be a little bit volatile, which means that his fantasy point totals are going to be a little bit volatile. $7,000, he has some upside. I would have preferred him to be cheaper, so I do think you can play him, but I do think there comes a little bit of risk as well. Atten Wright has kind of turned into their best scorer as the season has gone on, but he's been very volatile. Before the start of the NIT, he had been playing north of 30 minutes in every game. And then against Arkansas State, it's 27 minutes, and he only gets 6 shots, whereas he'd been taking pretty much consistently double digits. To me, I believe that Arkansas State game is kind of a flash in the pan, and I think that his profile is more consistent with what he had been doing beforehand, so I am going to be willing to go back to Atten Wright for that reason. Grant Newell is a guy that has been out on the floor a ton, not a high usage player, just not my favorite play at $5,000. Massey, Josell, and Walker, they just all kind of randomly have production. You never really know what you're going to get. If you're playing GPPs, I think you can roll them out there. Josell is the one that had the big game against Arkansas State, put up 20 DraftKings points in 21 minutes. All he did was score, though, 18 points in one board for those 20 DraftKings points. So I don't mind getting to him, but I don't think it's the best option. I'd much rather get my value plays from that Chattanooga and Bradley game, in my opinion. Now, on the Oklahoma State side, This is an interesting one because we've been frustrated playing this team the entire season long. Like they're just a hard team to handicap because they're just so inconsistent with their minutes, with their usage, and just with everything going on, right? But now that they've gotten in the NIT, they're kind of starting to settle things down just a little bit. They kind of have this core of players that are getting a lot of minutes. So their starting five in the NIT has been Arturo Dean, Jamiron Keller, Bryce Thompson, Robert Jennings, and Abu Usman. Coming off the bench, they will play Newman, they will play Brantley, they will play Dow, they will play Sumnick. The biggest piece of news is that Marcellus Avery has not played in the NIT. I cannot find any information on his injury. I'm not assuming that he is going to play anytime soon. And so what that's really done is it's just spread out the minutes even more because Jennings is still starting at the 4 spot. Hasn't been super duper productive. Sumnick will come in and play minutes at the 4 spot. Also hasn't been super productive. And Abu Usman has kind of been what he's been. Abu Usman is a supremely boom or bust big who generally doesn't play a ton of minutes, who is prone to foul trouble. And in this game, if he stays out of foul trouble, he could absolutely smash. But I cannot guarantee you that he's going to stay out of foul trouble. I mean, look no further than his last 5 games. He has 2 games over 35 DraftKings points and 3 games under 19 DraftKings points, one of which was a foul out in 10 minutes against Cincinnati. So there's just no consistency to Usman. I would not play him in any kind of cash format. I think he is a GPP play, and I think he's a high risk one at that because of his ability to get into foul trouble. Now, after Usman, right, that's kind of all the bigs they play, right? For the guard spots, they're super tough to predict, man, but they're really starting to like anchor around a core of Dean and Thompson and Keller. Those are kind of like the 3 that are going to play the most minutes for them. Now, the problem is that with this being a supreme pace down spot against North Texas, it's hard to like Arturo Dean as much as we have been because, and he's been really good, over 25 DraftKings points in 4 of his last 5. Because the problem is he's so dependent on peripheral stats that it's really hard for him to get those peripheral stats in a game that's going to be played at a snail's pace. So I kind of want to like ding him for that. Bryce Thompson has been this team's best scorer. He's taken at least 17 shots in the 2 NIT games, put up 43 and 28 points or DraftKings points in those 2 games. I'm willing to go back to him for that reason because he's not going to be dependent on peripheral stats. He is going to be kind of more scoring dependent, and I would rather have a guy like that against North Texas's profile because the peripheral stats are kind of the first thing to go when you reduce the possessions. You can still make the same number of shots in those same number of possessions. Brendan Newman has been coming off the bench. He's been really good in the NIT. 27 minutes in both those games, 28 and 26 DraftKings points. Jamiron Keller is the one, like we were saying, that was playing a ton of minutes. And now that he's in the starting lineup, he's at $5,400. He's been over 16 DraftKings points in his last 5. Pretty consistent, but like I would have preferred to see him cheaper. But he's playing well. He's playing a ton of minutes. And then Khalil Brantley is the other guard that'll come off the bench. He's also been great in the 2 NIT games, 26 and 20 DraftKings points. But the problem is with all these guys being good in the NIT games, Dean, Newman, Keller, Brantley, they all can't be good against North Texas in this pace down spot, right? So I would be weary of targeting, like if I'm targeting this Oklahoma State team, what I'm probably doing is I'm probably setting a rule where I'm only going to play one of Dean, Newman, Keller, or Brantley. I think you can play Thompson with one of the others. Would be my advice. I'm certainly not playing 3 of these Oklahoma State guards. I'm certainly not pairing like Dean and Newman together when they're going to cancel each other out. So like I said, I'm going to play Thompson plus one of Dean, Newman, Keller, or Brantley. That would be how I would attack it. But all right, y'all, that is going to do it here for this 2-game NIT DraftKings slate. Like I said, this one is kind of just, the appetizer for the big Thursday slate with the Sweet 16, and I cannot wait for that. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so that we can be with us here for that, as well as the rest of the NCAA tournament, and if DraftKings keeps offering them for the rest of the NIT for that matter. But that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Hopefully gave you guys all the information you need in order to win some money playing DraftKings or betting or player props or any kind of parlays here on this slate. But thank you guys for watching and listening to this point, and I will see you guys next time.